Today's episode is all about what it really takes to protect company culture during periods of growth and acquisition. In this conversation, we talk about how leaders build trust when they don't have all the answers, the role HR plays spotting early signs when culture starts to strain, and why recognition often gets missed as teams scale, and how to approach it more intentionally. Joining us today are Greg Ross-Munro, CEO of Sourcetoad and the creator of Thankscrate, and Stephanie Hiday, HR manager at Sourcetoad. Together, they bring both leadership and HR perspective on navigating change, maintaining culture and practice, and how real changes at Sourcetoad led to the creation of Thankscrate.
Giving gifts to your employees rocks. Forgetting gifts for your employees sucks. Employee appreciation boosts retention by 48%. But tracking the dates is tedious, finding gifts is overwhelming, and it's too easy for people to fall through the cracks. Thankscrate makes employee appreciation easy, so you never forget another gift again. Simply connect your payroll provider to get all your employees, their birthdays, and milestones in one place. Book a call with a Thankscrate gifting agent to design your employee appreciation plan so you can be the rockstar workplace that never forgets anyone. Thankscrate. Book a call with your gifting agent now.
And welcome to the Good Human Company podcast. I am joined by two lovely individuals today. I have Greg Ross-Munro, the CEO of Sourcetoad, and Steph Hiday, who is the manager of HR for Sourcetoad. And today we're going to talk to you a little bit about, what it means to be a good human company and aspire to be one of the leading companies in Tampa Bay. And real quick, Greg, before we go in and dive into these HR topics, maybe you could start us off with just a little bit for our audience on what Sourcetoad is and what you guys do over there.
Yeah, no problem. Hi, Matt. Thanks for having us on. Hi, Steph.
Hi, down the hall. Yeah.
Matt. Sourcetoad is 17 years old now. It's in our 18th year of operation, which is crazy to think that. And we started as a software engineering company, as a consultancy. So people would come to us and they'd say, "Hey, I've got this crazy idea. I want to build this thing." Specifically, when we started, it was around maybe the iPhone. That's how old the iPhone is, and we built apps. And then that kind of grew into a real grown-up company with software engineers who are professionals and project managers and designers, all building software for companies that are now in the Fortune 500s. We've got Viking Cruises, Sony. We've built stuff for the US government, built for public traded companies like Pinch a Penny. And yeah, we have a lot of fun building what we do, and we build like big, complicated, fun things. And to be honest, almost everything else these days is just people coming to us. They want AI in something. So we build AI into the things for them. So that's what we do.
Same here. I want AI and everything. And Steph, maybe you could just introduce yourself really quickly before we jump in as well.
Hey, of course. I've seen you guys obviously both around here. So this
just
is
a little bit
else because you guys kind of know this. Steph Hiday, I'm HR manager, as mentioned, at Sourcetoad. I started here, it's been a little over 6 years, started in operations, still continue to do operations. But yeah, solely focused pretty much on HR. And what is HR? There's so much that encompasses that. It's not just specific this and this and this. It changes and grows and iterates all the time. So there's definitely an operations component. So we have a lot of collaboration here with several managers and developers, obviously Greg, and, executive leadership. So yeah. That's what I do.
Exciting. It's good to just get some context before we jump in. And prior to this podcast, in our last episode, we had Christian on from Thompson Holdings. And we really dove in a lot to the acquisition of Sourcetoad from the Thompson Holdings side. And she really bragged a lot about how culture was very important to your entire team. So I really want to start off with as you're going through an acquisition and people are doing, have different events like that in their business, what did you guys think was the most important thing to really hold on to as you went through, that change with your culture?
It's a tough question what the most important thing was. For me, and the reason why we went through with a Thompson Holdings acquisition was I deeply value ownership in our culture. And what I mean by ownership is it shows up in different ways, but it's basically when somebody feels like what they're doing is that they have a responsibility and that they're accountable for. It's easy for somebody who's, the owner of the business or the CEO or somebody who's deeply responsible for something to care about everything, to care about the state of the kitchen, or like the state of the code base that you're working on, or taking pride in your work is kind of a type of ownership. But we're a professional services company. The thing that people really, when they hire us, the thing that they feel, or that they want to feel, or I hope they feel, is that we treat their products that we're building as if they were our own. I know that sounds like maybe it's a little abstract, but like, we take a deep sense of pride in them. We're not, I try and often say, like, we're not the parents of a product that we built for somebody, but we should act like at least the godparents, right? And so we spent a lot of time trying to build that. And we did it with starting with like phantom units as a like one form of like actual ownership. And then we converted those to option units as well. And then when we found out that Thompson was an employee stock ownership program, then that's something I kind of wanted for the company for a long, long time. Thompson definitely have that employee owner mentality as part of their culture. And I thought that was the most important thing for us to retain, to be a good professional services company, to still have people feel like they own part of this. And now everybody here literally does.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe Steph, from the operating side, when Greg's going through and really pushing for that type of environment, do you have any other things you may want to highlight from your perspective as well?
One of the things that's expected, rightly so, is communicating. And that was something that was super, super important from the beginning. Being incredibly transparent, and kind of, again, following through with, the values that Sourcetoad has. So it wasn't a humongous jump of, we're my gosh, why is everybody talking to us all of a sudden? Like, why is this there?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird that there's all these talks, right? I mean, we have, regular consistent sandwich days where we not only know, what's going on with potential clients, but current clients. So
Sandwich days is what we call our all hands, by the way.
right. We can't do sandwiches like we used to, but, the name has definitely stuck. The point being that communication was huge. And it's okay to be honest with people. We're all adults, and tell people the truth. That, hey, we still have more information coming, or this is where we're at in the phase of the transition process. But just know that, we need to give you the information that we have so that you're part of it. Because you're talking about very sensitive, delicate details. Salary is the first thing, right? It's the first thing people think of. The second thing is obviously, maybe not the second, it just depends on the person. I can't say that because that's, again, priorities are different for different people. But it's incredibly important to address the things that could potentially affect someone's security. So it's super important to say, hey, like, I see you, we're here. We may not know the answer, but thank you so much for like bringing that to our attention so that we can add this. And so communication is huge. Following in with the ownership of people being able to say, hey, I'm not sure, this is kind of weird, or it feels kind of weird, I don't know what to do. And them taking ownership and kind of speaking up and saying, what can I do to be a part of it?
Yeah, I like that. And, I went through an acquisition really early in my career, and it was challenging. I got, I was all over the place mentally about what was going on. So what came to mind when Steph was talking is like, change happens much quicker than clarity, right? We just don't know all the answers. So I would imagine, and I'm just jumping in your seat just for a second, like when you're going through that, some of the foundational things that you've done as a CEO are what are going to lead you through that process for people to be able to trust you, right? So, I mean, when you don't have all the answers in real time, what are some of the things you lean on to really help your employees get through a transition like that?
I think the best compliment that I got from an employee was I was in a meeting for something else. We were discussing, I don't know, AI tooling or something. And I asked one of the senior developers, how are they feeling about all this? Because, at this point we had kind of announced it, and we were telling people, it hadn't been done, but we were telling people that we were going through the process. A lot of companies, I think, just employees wake up one day and it's a surprise. And I understand the reasons for that as well. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that everything should be transparent. There's enough anxiety in the process of the people who are involved in it than like spreading that anxiety around an entire organization. Like, our culture is fairly transparent, and I think that if we had like sprung it on people, that would have not been great. So anyway, but back to this conversation, I asked the senior dev, like, how do you feel about this? Like, we're kind of in a small group, 2 or 3 of us, but what's everyone's take now that they know? And his response was, I don't really know a whole lot about this. I've been through one of these before and it was not good. But every single decision that you and Justin's my partner and CTO, every decision you guys have made, it has definitely been made with us in mind. And as a result, I trust you. And that kind of, or maybe like a tear to my eye or something. But it felt really, really good. That guy's been here almost 10 years. And the fact that he said that, it shows that we've just been consistent about like, if we say we're going to do something, we do it. If we will tell people what the risks are, we're open about them. Are we perfect? No, we can do better. But we'd set up enough trust in our team that when we told them we were going to do this and we thought it was the best thing for the company and the best thing for all the employees, we got the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, that's why I figured it did have, there's that foundation you built will carry you into that. It's hard to create stories if it's not built on honesty when you start to go into that situation. And Steph, as you're going through that, that early stage transition and really watching out for maybe tell signs of people that are struggling, are there certain things you can look for? Does everyone just raise their hand, or do you have to be a little proactive in that scenario, or what does that look like?
So that's to be determined. We're still in the process of this, but I know that it's really, really important that because of the consistent relationships that we maintain, with the developers and having the consistent one-on-ones and having the check-in conversations, like Greg mentioned, it's not, you can almost tell, not like your, personal partner and your family, but almost, right? Like we work together a lot. And even though a lot of it's virtual, it's when you've set up those relationships, you can tell when things are different or off. Also understanding that people have autonomy, right? It's not, it's not my place or anybody else's place to necessarily pry, but also creating that space to where if there's questions or significant concerns, but that's not built when all of a sudden an acquisition happens and, hey, what can we do for you kind of thing. So again, to Greg's point, because those relationships have been built, it's not as difficult for people to kind of stand up and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling or whatever it might be. Also understanding too, that there's some people that just they're pretty self-service, if that makes, I work with incredibly smart people that, the information, you give it to them, they're good to go. And sometimes I'm like, are you sure? Like, what else do you need? Can I help you? And I have to remember also too, that it's not about monitoring where they're at or lack of communication means anything negative, right? So, I think we're still in that place of, getting that feedback. But again, it's more about you create the vehicle for people to feel space. You can feel the confidence in that. I will say specifically with one-on-ones that I have, there's always room for, do you have questions about the transition? But in the routine prior to the transition, there was always a space for what do you have that comes to, any kind of HR things or benefits or that sort of thing. So, it's not, I'm going to see you every, 60, 90 days virtually. Let's talk. It's, what can I do? I have some one-on-ones that I come into the office and we walk around the pond because I need that too, right? Like I'm an employee here as well. So it's good to be able to hear things and be able to, hear the ideas so that they can be passed on. So again, you can get to the nitty gritty of the meetings and what the meetings look like. Yes, super important. But really it's about the relationships that have been built.
Yeah, I agree. And it's really good to hear how you guys had a good plan and really communicated well with the employees. One of the things that we learned when we had met with Christian before from Thompson was the big need for the leadership alignment between the two companies. And I think that was a really strong connection. But then there's also this leadership piece that's internal to Sourcetoad. And I'm just curious around, so you don't create a situation where your employees are getting mixed signals from different leaders and companies, because I've experienced that where the CEO said something, the VP I reported to said something a little different. Were there some key things that you guys had to make sure that you were in alignment with before you started all these things? Was that part of the process that you went through, Greg, at all? Or
Yes.
No elaboration here.
Do I want to talk about exactly which things we all had to get aligned on? I don't want to get into the details maybe of that, but
okay.
We definitely we had a lot of conversations internally about the philosophy of what we're doing. And that's normally where we start as a leadership team. I know that sounds hoity-toity or maybe not, but we start often at the why are we doing something? And then we all agree that we're going to be on the same page about the why. Because if you're not on the same page and you hear something different from our CTO as you do from our CXO or whatever like that, who are different people who have their own different opinions about why to do something, and they may both want the same thing and both express it in a different way. That can be confusing for somebody who is not in the room where the decision is made. So we actually did a few things where we started with a very small. The three partners in the organization started those conversations with each other and with Thompson. Then we expanded that to our full executive team, made sure that everybody was in alignment there. Then we expanded that to our what we call our large table group, which is our expanded management team for the entire organization. And then all those people got the opportunity to meet with Thompson. So there was a very large group at that point. And then when we started like rolling out the messaging about what we were doing, we had people who were giving presentations about middleware technology and how it's synchronized down to a cruise ship somewhere. At the end of their presentation, they just said a few words about why they felt that this was a good fit. And so everyone got the message in, like, they got a similar message, but they got it personalized to the person delivering it at every stage. And I think that really helped because they were like, okay, well, Eve's not scared of this and we trust Eve and she's not in Greg's ear the whole time and she's on our team. And then when she went ahead and said that, I think it carried more weight. The same thing with Steph. Steph did the same thing. Steph was like, yeah, I met with these people. I went out to dinner with them. I understand like why they want part of our culture and what they're going to keep. And I think that you can trust them. And I think when it comes from somebody else, as opposed to like the CEO says something, I think I'm fairly well trusted, but still people are going to be like, well, he's going to take the money and run. Or is like, are you just going to retire? It's like, it's different when it comes from not just the CEO.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I understand, around the specific parts of this, but it was more important to just understand maybe the process because there are hopefully companies that are in different stages that may lean into something like this and want to hear a different perspective as they go through it. Steph, was there anything there that you could highlight from a different perspective, or did he cover that pretty well?
No, covered that. It's pretty much the things that I was thinking of, Matt. You had mentioned too about going through an acquisition that was difficult. Like some people have and some people haven't.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing when it came to, aligning the information was, I don't know, this may sound crazy. I believe in being positive, but not overly positive because, there's that whole toxic positivity. So I don't know why this brought up for me, but just when Greg was just talking and again, you mentioning that earlier about another acquisition, I'm going to bring to the table what my experience is, but oftentimes I need to separate that, because this is, again, not about my experience. And so understanding that and knowing that, like, if I was in that situation, what a person that's never been through that, right? I can sit here all day long and say, it's amazing. Everything's great. Realistically, if you say that to someone, they're going to be like, just like, tell me what's up, but, being able to just say, because we've had some people that have had difficult experiences. To be able to say, I get it. I can't guarantee an amazing whatever because everybody, again, has their own, attachment to whatever that might be. But being able to say, look, these are the things in comparison to that are great. And, so I don't know why that jumped out for me, but it was especially about, the acquisition part and keeping that.
I get it. Being honest is more important than being, just overly optimism's great, but at the end of the day, it's a change. So
Mhm.
how we all perceive change is different. And I think that overall, it probably is really positive for the company. But there are individuals that may look at little things and it's different for them. So they may not accept that at first or go through it the same way that someone else would. Now, when it comes to, I've been in the office a lot and we'll cover that in a little bit as to why. I know that there are some employees that work there in the office and, it's a very nice office space for people to come and in and out of town, whatever. And then you have a large group of people that are remote. Was there some way to help balance that, I guess, that side of the remoteness versus the people that are in office? Because the people in office, they're going to have a little bit more of a day-to-day experience around maybe the vibe of what's going on, but the people that are remote may not have that same experience. So how do you balance that remoteness?
I mean, for some of the larger meetings, we asked the people to come into the office when we had Thompson in town. We went out to dinner with these people. That's getting to know folks face to face is important. In one of the things we did that was, I think, one interesting idea is we have an annual holiday party. And, even people who are remote, we fly in from all over the country if they're able to make it, and their partners if they're joining us as well. And we invited Thompson to that party as well. So that was early December. So a lot of people got to meet each other beforehand. And that was I think that was a really good experience for everybody because they got to sit down and meet them and then go have a drink with them. The whole company was there to like go and meet the CEOs. I don't know. We make a huge effort to include people in remote activities. So if we do something in the office like a hackathon, or I don't know, like there was a friendship bracelet making thing. There's always like some sort of virtual online thing that you can join as well, and you can participate, or you get the kit mailed to you, which Steph and her team do a great job handling. So I don't know, Steph, how do you think about remote employees?
Ditto to everything you said. And I also think too, it's about respecting the individual toad. That's because some honestly are much more comfortable based on their personality type, not necessarily being in the office. And having all the events and having several people come in, that's great. And that's absolutely encouraged. And when it's not, I often think, and I know this to be the case, is that if something is forced, you're often going to get a different response than you're looking for. So it's been really great to be able to say, we have these events and like, this is where, I am face to face. There's something about you cannot feel someone's energy. You cannot be around somebody unless you're physically around them. And we also respect the fact that there are, sometimes obviously that aren't here locally, but knowing that that's a very comfortable environment for them too.
Being in the Tampa Bay market, I know the Sourcetoad has been awarded one of the best places to work in Tampa Bay several times. And it's what drew me over to Greg.
Like 7, Matt, not a few, like 7, dude.
7. Oh, okay. I was keeping it modest for you, but 7, that's even more impressive. So, I'm going to transition this a little bit over self-serving to the Thankscrate side a little bit, right? So when you're aspiring to be a leader in a market and have people really appreciate the opportunity to work for you, because it's an unusual thing sometimes, right? There's a lot of startups out there and different companies, and not everyone thinks about the employee side as much as they should, right? They build something, think they pay people, and they think that's enough. We don't think that. We think that people have a choice before they go to work, and that we should create a positive environment and opportunity for them. And I know that along the line somewhere of trying to be the best leader that you could in the market, something sparked you to want to put, the build Thankscrate, the technology that we have that really automates engagement for employees for milestones and events, just a little plug there. But maybe you could cover that little magical spark or moment, like what made you want to create a platform like that to more appreciate your employees at Sourcetoad?
Yeah, I mean, I started hiring people in the company with the explicit idea that it would not be a place that sucked to work, because I'd worked in places that suck. And so I took that seriously. And I know that's, not the world's deepest philosophy for how our company should be run, but like not sucking. Like I get it. If it's not a hobby, if I stop paying you, you should not come into work, right? But I think that philosophy is like carried through to some degree, where people enjoy this place and enjoy each other's company, and we make hard decisions together, et cetera, et cetera. But we are a professional services company. Our number one asset that we have is human beings. And so, it's not just that I wanted to make a place that was a nice place to work, but recognizing those people and making sure that they feel seen is, I want to say it's strategic. It was more kind of like emotional at the time. These things like seem strategic in hindsight, but like you're just desperate to make these people happy because you need them to stay. And like, if that that you've gotten such great people, and that sounds so
but
much.
Other people will want them too. So
yeah,
you do have to do
I know they're getting headhunted and everything. So I'm trying to get them to stay. So we start doing all these things like benefits that are not just part of culture. Culture is the way we treat each other. Culture is the way we like handle tickets. So they're like the level of quality we work in. But yeah, so that's the long answer, is like why we started doing this, is that every anniversary and birthday we would celebrate in the office, especially when we were a small team, like 15 or so, before we're like, I don't know, something around 60-ish or 50-ish or something, 55 or whatever. We were all in the office together, and if it was someone's birthday, we would go and get a cake from Publix and would sing happy birthday like a bunch of nerds. But it was nice. And when it was somebody's anniversary, we'd get give them a bottle of champagne and a card or something. And what I started noticing was that the longer you had been at the company, the more cards you had on your desk. We would give like gifts and things for birthdays and cakes and champagne, mugs and stuff. But the cards on the desk would pile up. And that was kind of people's way of saying how long they'd been at the company. And I was like, oh, those cards like mean something to somebody. But as the company grew, it became more and more difficult to just track everyone's like birthday and anniversary. When you get like 20 or 30 people and they're all in the office, then there's this panic that starts to set into you because you're at least almost every week you're running to Publix to go and buy that bottle of champagne, or you start filling the operations room up with spare gifts so that when you do remember that it's Bob's birthday that week, that you don't have to like leave the office because you got so many meetings to go and grab a card out of the ops room and a bottle of wine and whatever it is and a t-shirt and package it all up very quickly and be like, oh, they're like, we didn't forget this. This is a well-planned situation. And like the anxiety around that was quite a lot, but the anxiety was way worse about the idea of missing somebody. If everybody's singing happy birthday in the break room, or if like during the all hands, we acknowledge somebody's, 5th year anniversary, that's one thing. But if we forget that there was another 5th year anniversary that year because we just missed it on a spreadsheet, that person's going to feel terrible. They're going to feel like, why did they forget me? And it's nothing personal. It's just, we got a lot going on and like we made a mistake. And the idea that like we would hurt someone's feelings like that kept me up at night. And I did not want to feel that way. I did not want anyone else to feel that way. And we're engineers. So of course we came up with an engineering solution, which is, why don't we start building a system that automates this? We'll find a place to do the picking and packing. We'll take all those bottles and those t-shirts and those gifts and we'll put them in a facility and we will have them be shipped to the person's house or whatever. And then COVID hit and we had to pivot. Like we had to start working on a system that would be much more robust to be able to ship to people all over the United States, because we now started hiring people everywhere, not just sending them to Tampa. We couldn't just handwrite the cards anymore because we knew that the cards were like a pivotal point. That message was really important. And so that's where Thankscrate came from. So now the way it works is that, the employee gets an email saying, hey, it's your birthday coming up or your anniversary, or it's a holiday, whatever. Here's one of these wonderful gifts that you can choose from. And they get to choose their own gifts that fits them better rather than getting some random bottle of something that I picked out. And then their direct supervisor gets a quick magic link, which they click on, and they get to either send it to somebody else who's better suited to doing it, but they write out what's going to be on that card. And that's what's super important. And then that card gets printed out at the fulfillment center, gets put in with the gift and sent to the employee so that they get that personalized message. They get the gift as well, which is, I think, important, but less important than the card and that sentiment. So, yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question? That was a very long answer.
It does. Yeah. I mean, it's a great backstory. I love our founding story of Thankscrate and where it actually bloomed from. Steph, you've been there for a while, right? And you've had other experiences before Sourcetoad. So I was hoping you could leave us, I like to think about the startups out there that aren't as mature as you guys are in their practice. They're just starting off, right? Are there some things that you've learned from seeing this ability to engage with them, the employees in that way versus maybe other places that haven't, or just maybe other things in general around, the flexibility of PTO, things that help build culture? I know culture is not necessarily just a benefit, but there are things that show employees that you are more concerned about them than just beyond the 9 to 5 situation, right? But is there something you could share with us there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as you mentioned, the benefits and PTO and all those things, the nuts and bolts are super important. And we all want to feel a certain way when we walk in the door, virtually or otherwise. Quick story, Greg had mentioned, prior to the pandemic, I remember during the pandemic, it was such a commitment by Sourcetoad to make sure that toads were recognized, as he mentioned, especially on birthdays, anniversaries. And when there's other projects that come up, and that's super important to say, hey, you did a great job. It's not always about a monetary or a gift, which again is very important. But again, that value system had already existed. So being able to say you did a great job on this, whatever it may be. But during the pandemic, one of my most favorite things to do, as weird of a time as that was showing up at people's houses and delivering gifts. And the reason why that was so important was because it was time. It's like, it is the most important resource that we have. So it was getting in the car and driving to their house and seeing, and seeing the kids run to the door and you can't get too close. And obviously, lots of changes since then. And it was, how do we continue that? If we're going to be consistent and empathetic in who we are into what this looks like going forward. And consistency has been huge. So for startups, like it's different for everybody. And when I came here, I was like, wow, they do this and wow, they do this. And like, so it's really never ever been about the nuts and bolts necessarily that are important. It's really about how we take care of each other, like truth. And, we do a job, we provide a service and we do it really, really well. And, like none of that matters as if we're not, again, taking care of each other in that way. So it's been that consistency of like, how can we do this? And like touching in with people and saying, do you think this sucks? Like, is this still a good thing that works for you guys or not? And like not making it where it has to be a certain way. So it can change, it can be different. And, it's completely about that empathy and taking care of each other. All of that will flow after that.
I think that's really well put, Steph. I think something that it sometimes escapes me or like I forget is that just putting in the effort shows that you care. It's not perfect, but like I remember Steph and other people on her team going to deliver things to people's houses during the pandemic. And yeah, that makes a huge impact when you're like, oh yeah, these people like this is not just a job. These people actually care about me.
And I can absolutely agree with those things because I spend enough time at Sourcetoad, and then I've always felt very welcome there, and the open dialogue between employees that it made me question the way I was, leading things in the past, because I've been raised by leadership that kind of just dictated things and didn't give me the opportunity to speak up a lot. And I've noticed since I've gotten there that you really do listen to employees a lot. At the end of the day, the CEO has to make hard decisions, right? But you really take in opinions and different things from the employees to really help you shape those decisions long term. And I think that it's something you can see in the business every day. But anyway, this has been a great conversation. I can't thank you guys enough. There's a lot of people out in the world right now that are possibly going through these same situations, or maybe they're thinking about doing this a year from now because there's opportunities. It's that foundation that you start to build in the beginning that determines the outcomes of these things. And I mentioned earlier, Steph, that my outcome at my first time being acquired at a tech company, it wasn't great because of all the noise and the lack of clarity that was provided to us by the leadership. And we all were just kind of left not knowing what was going on. But Greg, you did mention that in some cases that these opportunities are so big, it's really hard for leadership to share. And this acquisition was very large. So there was a lot of things that publicly couldn't get out. So it makes it a little more restrictive in what can be shared. But anyhow, I really appreciate everyone's time, and we've enjoyed having the conversation, and until the next one.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you.